In the quiet glow of ancient memory, there lies a city whose rise felt slow as drifting sand, a small riverside settlement that grew, step by gentle step, into one of the most powerful realms the old world had ever seen. Babylon, a name whispered through time like a soft echo, carried stories of soaring walls, peaceful laws, hanging gardens that touched the sky, and a king whose gentle firmness shaped the way civilizations understood justice. In this fourth episode of our ancient history journey, we begin a calm walk into that rise, a rise so steady, so deeply woven into the earth, that every part of it carries a lullaby-like rhythm, inviting you to drift deeper into the quiet past. And now, dear listener, welcome as we step softly into the rise of Babylon, into a world where history moves slowly, quietly, like a lantern swinging in the night. If you enjoy this peaceful journey, feel free to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the stories that help your nights become softer, calmer, and easier to drift through. In the gentle cradle of ancient Mesopotamia, long before Babylon carried its mighty name, there lay a quiet stretch of earth beside the slow-moving Euphrates, a place where the river breathed softly, where the wind wandered lazily across open fields, and where the earliest footsteps of future greatness settled without knowing what they would one day become. The land was simple, peaceful in its simplicity. Small patches of grass bent in the evening breeze, and tiny clusters of reeds swayed beside the drifting water, their faint whisper lulling the night to sleep. Families lived close to the river, building shelters from mud and straw, nothing grand, nothing proud, just warm. Humble spaces meant to keep out the chill of night. As evening fell, smoke rose slowly from cooking fires, carrying soft earthy scents through the quiet air. Children played with stones near the water, their laughter drifting lightly, fading gently into the long twilight. Life moved at a gentle pace, slow enough to feel the quiet between each heartbeat. And in that stillness, a civilization breathed its first calm breath. The people followed the river's rhythm, waking when light touched the water, resting when the sun slipped behind distant dusty hills. They planted barley in the moist soil, their hands sinking into the cool earth, drawing patient furrows, smoothing each row with quiet care. At night they gathered beneath dim starlight, telling stories of river spirits and wandering shadows, stories that drifted like soft lullabies carried by the rising night wind. Nothing in those early days showed greatness, yet everything carried the seed of something larger. Each basket of grain, each clay pot drying in the sun, each small choice shaped by daily life, would someday become part of a city whose name would echo for thousands of years. For now, the world remained peaceful, slow, subtle in its unfolding. The people lived close to the earth, listening to its quiet movements, trusting its gentle offerings. A small marketplace formed on firmer ground, a simple space where woven mats were traded for dried fish, where clay jars were exchanged for seeds. Trades were soft, almost silent, marked by nods and calm smiles. Everything felt unhurried, as if time itself walked with soft footsteps, careful not to disturb the fragile quiet. When night returned, the marketplace emptied, leaving only faint footprints in the drifting dust. The slow river shaped their days with a steady hand. In the mornings, fishermen pushed their small boats into the water, paddles gliding across the calm surface, sending ripples shimmering beneath the sun. Birds circled in peaceful arcs overhead, and distant animal calls floated softly across the plains. Every sound felt stretched and soft, carried gently through the warm air. Seasons passed in quiet cycles. Light rains tapped softly on the roofs of mud homes, filling the fields with life. In the heat of summer, the shade of a single tree felt like a sanctuary, a cool resting place where families shared water and old stories flowed like slow streams. At night, the stars glowed bright and steady, a sky full of quiet light that made every breath feel deeper, slower, sleepier. There was no urgency, no heavy ambition, only a simple understanding that life grew best when allowed to flow gently, like the river. Yet beneath that simplicity lived a quiet strength, a strength born from harmony between people and land. They worked together, learned together, rested together, building bonds that would become the foundation of something far greater than they imagined. Sometimes travelers arrived from distant lands, bringing stories from beyond the horizon. Their tales drifted softly through the settlement, speaking of mountains that touched the clouds, seas that stretched beyond sight, and kingdoms of golden-crowned kings. The people listened calmly, letting the stories settle in their minds, never knowing that one day travelers would speak of their own land with the same wide-eyed wonder. As the settlement grew, new homes appeared, paths formed, and the quiet murmur of daily life deepened. Lanterns flickered in doorways each night, casting warm, wavering light along the ground. The soft glow made the small community feel like a cluster of fallen stars. Dogs curled beside sleeping families, farmers rested their tired hands, and children drifted into dreams as night insects hummed through the long grass. Everything about those early days felt peaceful, as if the earth itself held the settlement in a slow, comforting embrace. The future waited quietly beyond the horizon, its heartbeat faint, but already present in every calm movement along the riverbank, in every seed planted with patient hands, in every gentle fire glowing beneath the pale moon. No one knew the quiet settlement would rise into a city of walls, gardens, laws, and legends. No one imagined their slow footsteps were shaping the foundation of Babylon, the city that would sleep and wake under the stars of history. But each peaceful moment, each silent night, each slow breath, became the soft beginning of an empire yet to be born. And so the first chapter of Babylon's rise remained wrapped in stillness, carried by the slow river, shaped by the patient earth, and held in the warm embrace of time, a beginning so gentle it felt like a dream settling softly over the ancient land. The Euphrates flowed with a slow, steady calm that shaped every hour of life in the early settlement, its waters drifting like a long sigh across the ancient land. Morning light touched the river first, painting its surface with soft gold that shimmered gently between the reeds. The people woke to this quiet glow, their eyes slowly adjusting to the warm light, their bodies moving with the unhurried rhythm of a life shaped by nature's patient pulse. Along the water's edge, the air felt cool, carrying the faint scent of wet earth, a scent that settled softly into every breath and made the early hours feel peaceful and light. Fishermen stepped toward the river with quiet purpose, their bare feet pressing into the smooth mud, leaving soft footprints that filled slowly with water. Their boats, small and handmade, rocked gently as they climbed in, pushing off with long wooden poles. The water parted without resistance, creating ripples that spread outward in slow circles, touching everything with a delicate, trembling light. As they moved farther from the shore, the world became silent except for the faint splash of oars and the soft calls of birds gliding above. On the banks, women washed clothes in calm motions, dipping fabric into the water and lifting it back into the air, letting droplets fall in silver threads that sparkled in the sun. The rhythm of this movement was soothing, a repetitive, peaceful gesture that carried the mind into a soft, drifting calm. Their voices rose in low conversation, never loud, always soft enough to blend with the sound of the river. Children gathered near them, scooping up handfuls of water, letting it slip through their fingers like liquid glass, watching sunlight play across the surface. Life revolved around the river so gently that time felt stretched, softened, dissolved into a long, slow drift. The settlement's pathways wound along the water's edge, shaped not by design, but by the soft habits of daily life. People walked them at an easy pace, carrying baskets of grain, bundles of reeds, or small clay pots balanced carefully on their hips. Every step felt unhurried, as though the earth itself encouraged a slower rhythm, one that allowed each moment to sink deeply into the senses. In the warm afternoons, shadows lengthened slowly across the fields, making the ground look like a woven blanket of earth and light. Farmers tended to their small plots of land, bending low to check the condition of the plants, smoothing soil around their growing roots. The sound of plants rustling in the wind blended with the faint hum of insects, creating a natural lullaby that drifted across the landscape. This gentle mixture of sounds made the afternoon feel dreamy, as though the entire settlement was breathing in a long, peaceful rhythm. Animals moved freely across the plain, small goats nibbling at dry shrubs, long-haired cattle wandering near the fields, and dogs resting beside their owners under the slow warmth of the sun. Nothing felt hurried, nothing felt sharp. Even the animals seemed to understand the slow pulse of this land, walking with calm steps, curling into soft shapes when they rested, listening to the quiet music of wind and water. By evening, the settlement returned once more to the soft glow of firelight. The sky shifted into shades of rose and amber, then slowly deepened into a deep, quiet blue. People gathered near their homes, lighting small fires that flickered steadily in the growing dark. The flames danced gently, casting warm, golden light across the ground, illuminating faces that relaxed into the comfort of the night. Conversations were soft, drifting like smoke, filled with stories that blended memory with myth. Many of these stories centered on the river itself. Elders spoke of spirits who lived beneath the surface, guiding the flow of water, protecting the crops, whispering warnings during storms. Children listened with heavy eyes, the heat of the fire warming their faces, the gentle crackle of burning wood soothing their minds. The stories were slow and rhythmic, told in soft tones that made the edges of wakefulness blur. In these moments, the early settlement felt like a cradle, gently rocking its people toward sleep. As darkness deepened, the river turned dark and reflective, becoming a long ribbon of night that shimmered under the stars. The wind grew cooler, brushing softly against the grass, carrying the faint scent of damp soil and distant rain. The village quieted as one home after another dimmed their fires, letting them burn down to glowing embers. Dogs curled near doorways, resting their heads on their paws, while night birds called from the shadows. Overhead, the night sky stretched wide and bright, filled with stars that seemed almost close enough to touch. The people often fell asleep looking up at these stars, feeling the quiet comfort of their steady glow. The vastness of the sky did not frighten them. Instead, it wrapped them in a deep sense of peace, reminding them of the larger world beyond their small settlement, a world they had not yet seen, but somehow felt connected to. The Euphrates, even in darkness, never stopped moving. Its slow current flowed through the night, whispering gently to the sleeping settlement, reminding it that life would always continue, always drift forward, always carry them toward a future they could not yet imagine. The river's song mingled with the soft breathing night, creating a continuous lullaby that held the land in a warm, peaceful embrace. In these quiet nights, dreams came, dreams of growing fields, of the river shining in morning light, of distant lands beyond the horizon. Dreams that felt like promises, soft and unspoken, waiting patiently in the dark. The people did not yet know that these dreams were the earliest reflections of a destiny far larger than their simple days. But the night knew, and the river knew. Carrying those dreams gently in its slow-moving waters, the land rested. The people rested, and the future rested with them, quiet and unseen, waiting for the moment when the first signs of a rising city would break through the calm surface of their peaceful world. The settlement beside the slow, patient river had lived through many seasons, each one settling like a soft layer of memory over the land. What began as a cluster of simple homes now held a quiet, expanding life. A life that grew not with sudden bursts of noise or ambition, but with gentle changes that folded themselves into the rhythm of each passing day. The people did not realize how much their world had begun to shift, yet the signs were there, subtle and steady, like whispers carried on the warm breeze. Paths that were once narrow trails had widened beneath the feet of many travelers. The ground felt smoother now, pressed by countless journeys, farmers carrying woven baskets of grain, families walking together toward the river, traders arriving with small gifts of stone, metal, or sweet-smelling spices. What had once seemed like occasional visits became a slow but constant flow of footsteps from distant places. Each traveler bringing a new story, a new question, a new possibility. The settlement began to feel like a meeting place, a gentle crossroads where different worlds touched quietly. People gathered more often in a small marketplace, which had grown from a single open space into a wider, busier clearing. The sounds were still soft, never rushed, but there was a low hum that lingered in the air now, a hum that felt like the early heartbeat of a town beginning to wake. Trading changed to... Instead of simple exchanges of grain and clay pots, there were new items, scattered across woven Matsini beads shaped from river shells, small figurines carved from soft stone coils of rope made from stronger fibers, small jars filled with fragrant oils. Farmers traded surplus harvests for tools they had never seen before. Fishermen returned from the river with larger nets woven with care, nets that shimmered like spider webs in the sun. These new tools made work easier, and these invited more time for reflection, more time for quiet community. The people built their homes with slightly more care now, shaping the mud with smoother edges, reinforcing walls with sturdier reeds. New homes appeared gently across the land, spaced out like stars scattered across a dark sky. Smoke from evening fires rose in more places, forming thin, drifting lines that crossed each other in the soft air. At night, the settlement looked like a constellation glowing on the earth, each small fire a quiet reminder that families rested inside. In the afternoons, when the breeze grew warm and the sunlight settled in a soft haze across the plains, groups of people gathered to talk about the changes they felt but could not yet name. They spoke of the river's generosity, of seasons that felt kinder than before, of new faces appearing with gifts and knowledge unknown to them. They wondered if their land carried some unseen promise, some gentle pool that invited others to come and stay. Among these slow conversations, children played in open spaces, their laughter light and breezy, drifting through the air like scattered petals. They built little structures out of clay, imitating the homes of their parents. They drew shapes in the dust with sticks, telling stories with simple gestures. Some of these children imagined themselves as builders, others as travelers, others as dreamers who would someday see the lands whispered about by distant guests. Even their dreams felt like hints of something quietly growing. The elders watched all of this with knowing eyes. They felt the shift more deeply, sensing an invisible momentum beneath the everyday silence. They gathered in shaded places, discussing the patterns of stars, the changing habits of the river, the strange but gentle pull of fate that seemed to be guiding their settlement toward an unseen horizon. Their voices were soft, their words slow, yet there was a firmness beneath their tone, a certainty that something important was beginning. The river, always steady, became a guide for these changes. Its banks widened over the years, creating new spaces for boats to dock. The fishermen built stronger vessels, smoothing the wood and shaping its curves to glide more easily through the water. They traveled farther now, exploring bends in the river they had never dared before, discovering reeds that grew taller, fish that shimmered with unusual colors, small coves where birds built elaborate nests. Each discovery added a little more wonder to the settlement's growing spirit. People began storing grain in larger clay containers, shaping them carefully so they could last through many seasons. They crafted pottery with smoother surfaces, more elegant curves, and subtle patterns etched by steady hands. These patterns became their early form of art-gentle waves, spirals, lines that mimicked the shape of flowing water. Art emerged quietly, like soft footsteps leading into the future. During the evenings, the air filled with sounds that had not been heard before. The tapping of stone against stone as tools were shaped, the rhythmic scraping of clay as pots were formed, the low hum of people singing as they worked. These sounds blended into the night, creating a peaceful harmony that followed every home into sleep. Travelers from distant lands noticed this change before the people themselves did. They spoke of the settlement as a place of promise, a place where the land felt fertile, where the air held a softness that soothed the weary, where the river glowed like a ribbon of light under the moon. They described it as a place that felt alive with possibility, a place where even silence carried a quiet sense of hope. Some travelers chose to stay. They built homes near the river, sharing knowledge from their homeland's house to shape metal, how to strengthen mud brick, how to weave cloth with tighter threads. In return, they learned the gentle rhythm of this settlement, the way the people moved in harmony with the river, the way their nights were filled with slow, calming stories. This exchange of knowledge formed the first threads of a culture that would someday stretch across an empire. And still, everything grew quietly. No sudden rise, no loud declaration, only the steady drift of change carried by the slow river. The settlement awakened softly, like a long, peaceful breath, its edges widening, its heartbeat deepening, its dreams becoming clearer, though still wrapped in gentle mystery. In these early whispers of a growing town, the foundation of Babylon began to shape itself, not through force or ambition, but through the quiet strength of a people learning to build a life together, carried forward by the steady flow of the ancient river that had watched over them from the very beginning. As the settlement grew softly along the winding banks of the Euphrates, a new awareness began to settle in the hearts of the people. The village, once scattered and open, now felt the subtle need for boundaries, a gentle protection for the fragile lives that had slowly woven themselves into the fabric of this quiet world. There were whispers among the elders, soft but persistent, about strange travelers passing too close at night, about distant storms that might carry danger, about the river's sudden moods that sometimes brought more water than expected. And so the idea of walls began, not with urgency, not with haste, but as a slow, careful thought, a whisper that grew with the days. Mud bricks were shaped by patient hands, soft clay pressed into wooden molds and left to dry under the sun's warm gaze. Every brick carried the faint imprint of its maker's fingers, a quiet signature of labor, care, and time. Children watched in fascination as elders and young adults alike pressed the clay into molds, stacking each brick with meticulous attention, measuring the gentle rise of each wall, ensuring its balance, ensuring its place in the rhythm of the town. The work was steady, repetitive, almost hypnotic in its own way, like the soft pulse of the river that guided the settlement's heart. The walls themselves rose slowly, brick by brick, their height increasing day by day, yet never overwhelming the surrounding landscape. They were not meant to dominate, only to cradle, to offer safety without harshness. A quiet shelter against the uncertainties that lay beyond. Families placed small offerings in the spaces between bricks, tiny tokens of gratitude for the protection that would one day become so essential, blessings whispered in the calm air. Each stone, each brick, each careful gesture added a new layer to the settlement's growing confidence. A subtle, steady rhythm that echoed through every street and alley. By the time the walls began to stretch higher than a man's head, the settlement had already taken on a new shape. Streets followed a gentle pattern, curving slightly to follow the river's natural flow, while homes nestled close to one another, their rooftops forming a patchwork of soft shadows in the sun's light. From the walls, one could see the river winding lazily through the plains, a constant companion, a slow, patient teacher. The people began to understand that the walls were not just for defense, they were a marker of their collective presence, a silent assertion of their life together. Inside the enclosure, life continued in its gentle, measured passage. Farmers tended to their plots with quiet diligence, their hands kneading the soil, smoothing it, planting rows of barley and wheat that swayed softly in the wind. Women carried water from the river in clay jars, their steps slow and careful to avoid spilling even a drop. Children followed in their wake, gathering small stones or playing quietly with strands of reeds, their laughter blending seamlessly into the soft hum of daily life. Every movement seemed choreographed by the calm rhythm of the earth and water, as if the walls themselves encouraged a sense of steadiness and patience. Evening brought the same soothing transformation it always had, the sun descending into a warm, amber haze, casting elongated shadows across the mud streets. Lanterns were lit in doorways, casting soft, flickering light that seemed to breathe alongside the people inside. Conversations flowed quietly, stories drifting into the night air like smoke, tales of small triumphs, slow discoveries, and distant lands heard from travelers who had passed through. The elders often sat near the walls, listening to the soft sigh of wind over the river, sharing knowledge with the younger generations in hushed, measured tones. The first walls also changed the way the people saw themselves. They moved through the town differently, no longer as scattered individuals, but as part of a connected whole, a community held gently together by the careful rise of clay and straw. The walls gave them a sense of permanence, of quiet pride, without disturbing the gentle balance of their lives. They learned to walk along the paths that now wound between these structures, feeling the texture of the bricks beneath their fingertips, listening to the faint echoes of footsteps, hearing the river whisper through gaps in the walls, always patient, always slow. Travelers noticed these walls as well. They approached with respect, speaking softly, careful not to disturb the calm energy of the town. They shared news of distant settlements, of people building with similar care, of lessons learned across the rivers and plains. The villagers listened with gentle curiosity, absorbing new ideas as though they were seeds falling into well-prepared soil. Each story, each lesson, each new tool or method introduced quietly expanded the settlement's knowledge, strengthening its foundation not only physically, but mentally and culturally. With the walls came new ways of organizing life. Storage areas were built along the inner edges, where grain, clay, and tools could be kept safe. Pathways widened slightly to accommodate the careful passage of carts and animals, still moving in gentle harmony with the human rhythm. Spaces were set aside for quiet reflection, areas where children and adults could sit near the river, watching its slow currents, letting the peaceful motion lull their minds into contemplation or light rest. Even the arrangement of homes reflected a soft symmetry, creating a sense of balance and order without harshness or rigidity. Night after night, the settlement under the new walls rested deeply. The river continued to flow steadily beside them, carrying secrets and stories, reflecting the stars that shone brighter in the calm darkness. The walls themselves seemed to hum with quiet strength, a lullaby of protection that echoed through narrow streets, through doorways, through small hearts. It was as if the very earth, the river, and the walls had conspired to wrap the people in a gentle embrace, one that encouraged sleep, peace, and the slow unfolding of life. The villagers began to dream of larger possibilities, though dreams were always slow, careful, and soft. They imagined taller structures, smoother roads, gardens that would one day flourish within the protective embrace of the walls. They envisioned stronger boats to navigate farther stretches of the river, new methods of planting that might yield more grains, and ways to teach their children the gentle wisdom they had accumulated. These dreams were quiet, almost invisible, yet they carried a weight that would shape the settlement for generations. And so, with each brick carefully placed, with each measured stride along the newly formed paths, the settlement continued its gentle transformation. The first walls were not a barrier to life. They were a guide, a slow instruction in the art of patience, unity, and quiet foresight. Within their soft, rising lines, the town began to recognize its own potential, to sense the distant echo of greatness, even as every night fell softly around them. Every river ripple carried a lullaby, and every breath of wind reminded them that the world moved gently, steadily, toward a future that would one day bear the name Babylon. The settlement within its new walls began to attract gentle visitors from distant lands, travelers who carried goods, ideas, and stories as softly as they carried their belongings. Their arrival was quiet, unhurried, like a slow ripple spreading across the calm surface of a pond. Small boats drifted along the river, their hulls rocking slightly with the motion of the current, bringing clay-woven mats, dried fish, and small bundles of fragrant spices that filled the air with new scents. Each traveler entered the town with care, observing the pace and rhythm of life, never disturbing the soft, steady heart of the settlement. The townspeople welcomed these arrivals with quiet curiosity. They examined the new goods carefully, touching the smooth clay pots, inhaling the aroma of spices, and feeling the texture of woven mats beneath their fingers. Exchanges were calm, almost ritualistic, marked by slow smiles and nods rather than raised voices or hurried haggling. Each trade seemed to teach a subtle lesson in patience, in balance, in understanding the needs and rhythms of another person. In this way, prosperity began to creep into the settlement, not with sudden noise or wealth, but with slow, careful accumulation, carried gently in the hands and hearts of all involved. As days passed, the marketplace became a place of quiet harmony. Mats were laid neatly on the ground, goods arranged in simple patterns that reflected both order and an unspoken aesthetic sense. Farmers brought surplus grain, fishers contributed their finest catchers, and artisans displayed small creations shaped from clay, reeds, and soft stones. Travelers returned with items the locals had never seen before: polished shells, beads that caught the sunlight, small jars of fragrant oils, and fabrics dyed with colors bright enough to startle the calm eyes of the townspeople. Yet nothing ever felt rushed. Nothing ever demanded haste. Every item was examined slowly, appreciated quietly, and integrated into daily life with care. The subtle increase in prosperity began to change the settlement in gentle, noticeable ways. Families could store more grain for the coming seasons, creating small, neat silos along the edges of the town. Clay pots were carefully stacked to hold both food and water, and the art of pottery improved with every new idea brought by travelers. Tools were refined, sharper yet simple, each one molded to fit the hand with ease, allowing work to be accomplished more quickly, but without disturbing the calm rhythm of life. The village grew in a measured way, extending softly beyond its first walls, yet always maintaining the slow, deliberate pace that defined its days. Children watched these new developments with fascination, their imaginations drifting along with the river's slow current. They marveled at the shapes of exotic beads, the vivid colors of distant fabrics, and the designs etched into fine clay. Some began to imitate the travelers, shaping tiny pots or weaving miniature mats. Learning by careful observation, practicing over and over until their small hands could mimic the gentle precision of those who had come from afar. Ivanin played the rhythm of life, encouraged focus, patience, and quiet skill. Evening in the town carried the same calming consistency it always had, yet it was now enriched by the faint smell of spices and the gentle laughter of shared stories. Travelers and townspeople gathered near the riverbank or around small fires, speaking softly about distant lands, the journeys they had made, and the slow accumulation of knowledge and tools that shaped their days. The sound of their voices blended with the river's constant whisper, the rustling of reeds, and the faint chirping of insects, forming a natural lullaby that seemed to guide the entire settlement into a deeper awareness of itself. The traders also brought lessons that could not be bought or sold. They shared methods for storing grain that preserved freshness, techniques for shaping clay so that it would not crack in the heat, and ways of weaving threads so that fabrics remain strong even under frequent use. These teachings traveled slowly through the settlement, passed from elder to child, from artisan to neighbor, embedding themselves into the quiet routines of daily life. Each lesson became a thread in the growing tapestry of knowledge that would one day support a much larger community, a city that would rise from humble beginnings. With the increase in goods came a subtle increase in social complexity. Families began to plan more carefully, taking into account the cycles of planting, harvesting, and trading. Paths were smoothed to allow carts to move more easily, and small storage areas were constructed near homes to keep tools and food close at hand. Even the layout of the town seemed to adjust in quiet response homes clustering with gentle symmetry. Small open spaces forming naturally where children and neighbors could gather, and streets winding softly to follow the curves of the river rather than imposing strict order. The river continued to guide all of this growth. Boats became slightly larger, allowing more goods to be transported at once. Yet they never moved too quickly, always gliding gently with the current. Fishermen explored further reaches, discovering quiet coves filled with abundant fish, reeds taller than any they had seen before, and shallow banks where waterfowl nested. They brought their findings back to the town with care, their observations shared in soft, measured tones, reinforcing the sense that knowledge and prosperity, like the river, moved gradually, naturally, inevitably. As the settlement's prosperity grew, new opportunities arose for leisure and creativity. Children had more time to play and learn, artisans had moments to refine their craft, and elders could sit quietly, reflecting on the gentle changes occurring around them. The town began to see the subtle interconnections between trade, culture, and life, recognizing that even small exchanges carried the seeds of lasting transformation. The quiet hum of these interactions became a rhythm, a background pulse that moved through every home, every street, and every family in the settlement. Nightfall brought a special calm to the prosperous town. The river reflected the last light of the sun, rippling with a soft, amber glow that danced across the water. Fires in the homes flickered gently, casting shadows that seemed to stretch in slow motion, merging with the night in a way that felt natural, inevitable, and deeply reassuring. The town, now strengthened by trade, walls, and growing knowledge, settled into a rhythm that matched the rivers, as if the heartbeat of the settlement had synchronized with the pulse of the land itself. Even as the people slept, the quiet prosperity continued to spread. Goods, ideas, and knowledge drifted through the town like a gentle mist, carrying with them the promise of a future that would slowly, softly rise into something remarkable. Each small addition to the town, whether a basket of grain, a polished tool, or a carefully woven mat, was a tiny whisper of the larger story that would one day be known as Babylon. And as the river flowed endlessly beside them, the settlement dreamed in harmony with its slow, steady pulse, preparing for the gradual unfolding of a civilization that would one day touch the world. Within the quiet, softly growing settlement, life began to ripple with a new dimension, a gentle layering of traditions and routines that shaped the earliest whispers of culture. The people moved through their days in a rhythm dictated not only by the river and the soil, but also by the quiet pulse of their shared experiences. The walls that had been carefully built, the soft markets where traders exchanged their goods, and the small homes clustered together. All these elements created a calm stage upon which human creativity could unfold slowly, softly, like petals opening in the early morning sun. From the first gentle rituals around the hearth, culture began to bloom. Each family maintained small fires that were not just for cooking, but for shared warmth, a focus for storytelling and reflection. In the evenings, the glow of the fire highlighted hands shaping clay, weaving reeds, or polishing stones. These simple tasks carried an unspoken beauty, a quiet artistry that formed the earliest patterns of daily life. Children watched intently, copying each motion with soft precision, absorbing the subtle rules of form, function, and care that were passed down without rush or force. Stories became the backbone of this emerging culture. They were told softly, in slow rhythms, carrying lessons, observations, and the memory of times before the settlement had grown into walls and markets. Elders spoke of the river, its moods, and the creatures within it. They whispered about the stars, tracing patterns in the night sky and imagining distant lands far beyond the horizon. These stories were gentle, almost hypnotic, and in them, children learned patience, understanding, and the intricate balance between the human world and the natural one. The narratives themselves carried a rhythm that seemed to echo the flow of the river, calming minds and softening hearts. Music, too, began to find its way into daily life. Soft rhythms were created by tapping stones together, by drumming lightly on hollowed reeds, and by humming simple melodies that mimicked the gentle sounds of nature. The songs were not loud or commanding. They were slow, lilting, designed to move in harmony with the body and the surrounding world. When sung near the riverbank, the music carried over the water, blending with the rustling reeds, the soft murmur of flowing currents, and the distant calls of birds forming a lullaby that seemed to touch every corner of the settlement. Art and decoration became subtle yet meaningful expressions of identity. Patterns etched into clay pots mirrored the curves of the river, the spirals of the wind, or the gentle rise of grains in the field. Small carvings of animals, shapes, and symbolic forms began to appear in red mats, in pottery, and on simple wooden objects. These items were functional, yet their beauty lay in the care of their creation. Each piece told a story, each mark a reflection of thought and observation, teaching that even ordinary objects could carry meaning and grace. The process of making not just the final product became a quiet meditation for those who shaped these items. The arrival of travelers with exotic goods further enriched cultural growth. Small beads, colored fabrics, and polished stones inspired new forms of art and expression. Craftsmen experimented with designs and techniques, integrating foreign ideas with local practices. They learned slowly, observing, trying, adjusting, until a harmonious balance emerged. The settlement absorbed these influences with care, blending the old and new in a way that respected tradition while welcoming innovation. Culture, in this way, unfolded gently, with patience, without rush, building depth as much as breadth. Religious or spiritual practices, still soft and intimate, began to emerge alongside these cultural threads. People left small offerings along the riverbank or in carefully chosen spots near their homes. Some would speak to the river in hushed tones, thanking it for sustenance, for the fertile soil, for the steady pulse of life that never faltered. These acts were never loud or demanding. They were slow, thoughtful, meditative, a way of connecting with the unseen forces that guided their existence. Even the youngest children learned these practices, joining in with small gestures that mirrored the adults, feeling the calm power of ritual seep into their waking consciousness in dream-filled sleep. Trade continued to play a quiet, formative role in the culture. Beyond the mere exchange of goods, traders brought stories, songs, and practices from far-off lands. They demonstrated weaving techniques, metal shaping, clay forming, and culinary methods that the locals had never encountered. Each lesson arrived gently, often observed in silence before being practiced by patient hands. Through repetition, observation, and quiet experimentation, these foreign elements were absorbed, modified, and transformed, becoming a natural part of the settlement's daily life. Culture, thus, was built not by force, but by the slow accretion of knowledge, by the gentle blending of old and new. Children grew within this cultural environment, learning from the rhythm of life rather than being instructed in harsh terms. They walked the streets observing patterns in the placement of homes, learned the soft language of trade, played near the river while absorbing stories and songs, and practiced crafts with patient repetition. Their minds absorbed the subtle connections between community, environment, and rhythm. The river's slow, steady flow became a metaphor for their own learning, for the way knowledge and culture were carried gently from one generation to the next, like water moving over smooth stones, shaping them softly, invisibly, without hurry. Evenings were particularly rich with this quiet cultural energy. Families gathered by small fires, observing the shadows cast on walls, telling stories that had been passed down through months and years, softly shaping the imagination of children and adults alike. Music, song, and soft laughter mingled with the gentle murmur of the river and the whispering reeds. The entire town seemed to breathe together, its rhythm slow, deep, and calming. Every night felt like a lullaby. Every story a gentle nudge toward patience, harmony, and understanding. As the settlement matured, so did the subtle complexity of its culture. Homes were decorated with small motifs, crafts became more intricate, stories wove threads of past and present, and trade introduced ideas that were adapted with care. People began to recognize themselves as part of a continuum, a slow, unbroken chain of practice, observation, and innovation. Each day built upon the last. Each act contributed to a growing identity that was neither loud nor ostentatious, but steady, deep, and enduring. The heartbeat of culture matched the river's pulse, soft, persistent, unwavering. In this gentle evolution, the people of the settlement unknowingly laid the foundation for a civilization that would one day be called Babylon. It was not built in a day, nor through grand proclamations, but through patient accumulation of knowledge, ritual, artistry, and quiet interaction. The walls, the marketplaces, the river, and the slow arrival of traders had all combined to shape a community that valued rhythm.com and harmony. In every gesture, every story, every whispered song by the riverbank, the culture of Babylon began to flow, slow and enduring, like the river itself, carrying its people toward a future still soft and unseen, yet inevitable. As the seasons passed slowly along the banks of the Euphrates, the settlement began to extend itself beyond the original walls. Not with sudden urgency, but with a soft, measured growth that mirrored the natural rhythm of the river. Homes stretched gently into new areas, roads curved in subtle patterns, and gardens took root where open spaces had once been empty. The town expanded quietly, each addition placed with care, each new family integrated into the calm rhythm of community life. This expansion was not rushed. It was a slow unfolding, like a flower gradually opening under the sun, a deliberate process that encouraged stability, patience, and harmony. Families moved carefully into these new areas, building homes that reflected the gentle architecture of the original settlement. Mud bricks molded by patient hands were stacked in even rows, each wall aligned with soft precision, every doorway and window designed to catch the light at the correct angle. Roofs were thatched with reeds harvested from the riverbanks, layered softly to protect against rain while still allowing warmth and air to circulate. Each home was a microcosm of the larger settlement, a reflection of the values of care, rhythm, and balance that guided daily life. The movement into new neighborhoods was gradual, deliberate, and harmonious, never chaotic or hurried, and it was observed and learned by the children who followed their parents' slow steps. Within these expanding neighborhoods, small communities formed naturally. Families worked alongside one another, sharing tools, teaching crafts, and caring for animals together. The rhythm of life became slightly more complex, yet remained soothing. Paths were created as people moved from one home to another, widening naturally under the gentle tread of bare feet and soft-soled sandals. Gardens grew between houses, filled with barley, wheat, lentils, and vegetables, carefully tended in slow rotations that respected the cycle of seasons. Children played quietly in these gardens, their laughter blending with the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of bees, their small games reflecting the harmony of adult life. As neighborhoods grew, the marketplace expanded as well. Traders arrived more frequently, bringing goods that now required more space for display and exchange. Mats were laid with care in newly designated areas. Small tables were crafted to hold jars, fabrics, and woven baskets. The slow rhythm of trade became a familiar pulse, a natural extension of the town SCG now life. Every transaction was soft, deliberate, a slow exchange of material goods and subtle knowledge, reinforcing the patterns of community and cooperation that had emerged from the earliest days by the river. Social life flourished quietly in these new areas. Families gathered in shared courtyards to exchange news, teach younger children, or work together on tasks like weaving mats, shaping clay, or drying grains. The rhythm of work and rest was carefully observed, with periods of quiet reflection encouraged by the elders. Music and soft songs became part of the daily life, floating gently through the streets, rising in the morning sun and drifting into evening, carrying stories, history, and lessons in slow, comforting cadences. The children learned to imitate these sounds, humming along with elders, their small voices blending seamlessly into the soft background of community life. Evening in the expanding neighborhoods brought a special tranquility. The sun lowered into the horizon, painting the walls and roofs with shades of gold, pink, and deep amber. Fires were lit gently in hearths, their warm glow reflecting softly on the mud walls, creating a sense of continuity and calm across the growing settlement. The river continued its steady murmur, weaving a slow, peaceful melody that echoed through the neighborhoods, uniting old and new areas alike in a shared rhythm. Families gathered close to the fires, sharing food, recounting tales of the river and distant lands, and speaking in gentle, measured tones that encourage reflection and rest. The neighborhoods also allowed for subtle experimentation in organization and design. Paths were arranged to follow the natural contours of the land. Small squares emerged where multiple families converged, and open spaces were maintained for gatherings or quiet play. These spaces became focal points for community interaction, teaching children about cooperation, sharing, and the gentle flow of life between homes. The elders guided these arrangements with care, their knowledge of the river, the seasons, and the behavior of the settlement forming an invisible blueprint that ensured balance, beauty, and tranquility. Animals played a quiet but important role in these neighborhoods. Goats and sheep roamed gently within controlled spaces, their soft bleating mingling with the hum of human activity. Dogs followed families slowly, alert but calm, their movements reflecting the unhurried rhythm of daily life. Birds nested in the eaves of homes and in the taller trees planted carefully between houses, adding a layer of gentle sound and life to the quiet streets. The presence of these animals reinforced the rhythm of existence, teaching children responsibility, patience, and the subtle joys of companionship without rush or strain. Trade continued to shape culture in these growing neighborhoods, bringing items from farther lands, polished stones, small beads, refined tools, and carefully dyed fabrics. Each object was examined and integrated with care, inspiring subtle innovations in craft, art, and daily routines. People adapted these new items into their lives slowly, experimenting with methods, teaching one another, and passing knowledge along to the next generation. This process reinforced the unhurried nature of life, showing that growth could be steady, intentional, and deeply satisfying. As the town expanded, small communal rituals began to take form in the shared spaces. Children and adults alike participated in simple ceremonies, often related to planting, harvesting, or the flowing river. These rituals were never loud or formal, but soft, repetitive, and meditative, a way to honor nature, the river, and the continuity of life. Through these actions, a shared sense of identity began to emerge, quietly binding neighbors together, creating cohesion without coercion, and teaching the subtle patterns of community and cooperation. Night brought calm across the neighborhoods. The fires in each home flickered softly, illuminating mud walls and weaving shadows in gentle motion. Stars rose over the river, casting a delicate reflection on the flowing water. The entire settlement seemed to breathe in unison, the rhythm of life slow, deep, and peaceful. Families rested, children dreamed, and even the animals settled quietly, lulled by the gentle harmony that pervaded every street, every garden, every soft path between homes. The neighborhoods, though new, felt deeply connected to the older parts of the settlement. Each brick, each path, each hearth, a soft continuation of the life that had begun by the river long ago. In this slow, gentle expansion, the town learned the delicate art of balance between old and new, work and rest, growth and patience. The neighborhoods became more than homes. They were spaces of learning, play, reflection, and quiet collaboration. Every action, every sound, every gesture contributed to the unfolding rhythm of life, echoing the eternal song of the river. And as the settlement settled into this steady cadence, it continued to move forward softly, gradually building the foundation for the civilization that would one day be called Babylon, a city born not in haste, but in the careful, patient shaping of life itself. The river, always patient, continued its quiet, steady flow alongside the growing settlement. Its waters moved without rush, carrying both life and gentle lessons to those who lived along its banks. The people came to understand the subtle language of the river, the way it shifted with the seasons, the way it mirrored the sun's warmth in the summer and the soft gray of winter skies. In its calm currents, they found nourishment for the soil, food for their tables, and inspiration for their crafts, songs, and stories. It was not a force to be conquered, but a companion to be observed, respected, and gently followed. With each passing season, the river revealed new gifts. Tiny fish appeared in shallow coves, their scales glinting softly in the sunlight, tempting the hands of patient fishermen. Reeds grew taller along the banks, sturdy yet flexible, perfect for weaving mats, building homes, and crafting simple tools. Clay deposits carried slowly downstream, collected in quiet eddies, waiting for human hands to shape them into pots, jars, and even the currents themselves taught lessons, some shallow and playful, others deep and deliberate, demonstrating how to move with patience, how to avoid resistance, and how to work in harmony with natural rhythms. The people began to build small irrigation channels, guiding the river's waters carefully toward the fields. These channels were narrow and gentle, following the contours of the land, allowing grain, barley, and vegetables to flourish in soft, steady growth. Children observed these channels, fascinated by the subtle motion of water and the effect it had on the soil. They played near the edges, dipping their hands slowly into the currents, learning through touch and observation how to respect the river's power while harnessing its gifts. In this way, knowledge passed from one generation to the next in a calm, immersive manner, rooted in experience rather than instruction. Fishing also became an art of patience. Nets were woven tightly, but softly, designed to glide through the water without disturbing it. Fishermen moved quietly along the river banks or in small boats, their bodies in harmony with the gentle sway of the current. Fish were caught with care, and the catch was shared among families, ensuring that all benefited without waste. These practices reinforced the subtle lessons of reciprocity, respect, and patience, values that would guide the settlement as it grew ever larger. The river inspired more than just sustenance. It shaped the imagination of the people. Children, watching the ripples and reflections, began to draw patterns in the sand along the banks, imitating the dance of light and water. These designs became the earliest forms of artistic expression, simple yet elegant, connecting the natural world with human creativity. Adults, too, found inspiration in the river's gentle flow. Potters traced the curves of its eddies in clay. Weavers mimicked the meandering currents in their mats, and singers composed soft melodies that mirrored the rhythm of water over stone. The river was both teacher and muse, offering lessons without words, guidance without force. Even the settlement's construction reflected the river's influence. Homes and walls were aligned to catch the light and shade, to protect from floodwaters, and to complement the gentle slopes of the land. Streets curved naturally, following the soft contours of the river's path, and open spaces were maintained where water might rise or animals might gather. This harmony with the natural environment reinforced a quiet sense of security and stability. People moved through their days in tune with the river's subtle cues, learning timing, rhythm, and the balance between action and rest. Trade along the river grew naturally as well. Travelers arrived in small boats, gliding slowly past homes and gardens, bringing goods from distant lands, spices that filled the air with unfamiliar scents, polished stones that caught the sun in dazzling bursts, fine fabrics dyed in colors previously unseen. These items were received with quiet curiosity, studied carefully, and integrated into daily life with gentle care. Craftsmen experimented with techniques and materials, blending foreign methods with local tradition. Every new item was observed, practiced, and slowly adapted, reinforcing the calm, unhurried evolution of culture within the settlement. Rituals connected to the river began to take shape. Families left small offerings along its banks, soft gestures of gratitude for sustenance, safety, and gentle guidance. Some would chant quietly, their voices blending with the sounds of water, reeds, and distant birds. Children participated with small acts placed in a stone, tossing a flower, whispering a short word of thanks, learning the rhythms of gratitude and awareness without instruction. These simple practices deepened the community's connection to the river, embedding respect, mindfulness, and harmony into daily life. Even the animals of the settlement were influenced by the river. Goats and sheep grazed in areas softened by the river's flow. Birds nested in the reeds, and fish thrived in the calm currents. Dogs followed fishermen gently along the banks, learning through observation the subtle cues of movement, patience, and care. All life, both human and animal, moved in quiet cooperation with the river, forming a slow, interconnected rhythm that defined the days and nights of the settlement. Evenings were enriched by the soft music of flowing water. The river reflected the fading sunlight, creating a warm glow that spread across mud walls, rooftops, and open courtyards. Families gathered near small fires, listening to the faint rush of water, telling stories inspired by distant journeys or by the subtle mysteries of the river itself. Children fell asleep to the sound of water and gentle storytelling, internalizing the soft rhythms of nature and human life intertwined. The river's presence became a lullaby, a quiet constant that guided thought, sleep, and dream. Over time, these lessons extended beyond immediate survival. People learned to store water carefully, to rotate crops in harmony with seasonal flows, and to plan small projects in accordance with natural rhythms. Knowledge of the river's moods was passed from elder to child, from parent to neighbor, becoming an invisible curriculum of patience, awareness, and foresight. Even as the settlement expanded, the river remained the steady, guiding pulse, reminding all that life was a slow accumulation of care, attention, and thoughtful action. As the moon rose, reflecting softly on the gentle current, the town rested in quiet harmony with the water. Every ripple, every soft lap against the riverbank reinforced the calm pace of life. Dreams carried visions of flowing water, abundant fields, and slow, steady growth. The river, ever patient, continued its timeless course, offering sustenance, inspiration, and quiet guidance to the people of the settlement, nurturing the early foundations of a civilization that would one day be called Babylon. And in that gentle, steady flow, the people learned the delicate art of living in harmony with both nature and themselves, preparing for the slow unfolding of greatness yet unseen. As the settlement continued to grow along the gentle bends of the river, a subtle shift began to take place within the rhythm of its life, with expanding neighborhoods, increasing trade, and the slow accumulation of goods and knowledge. The people recognized the quiet need for guidance, a soft, steady hand to help coordinate efforts, maintain balance, and nurture the settlement's harmonious development. Leadership did not arrive suddenly or with fanfare. It emerged slowly, naturally, like the morning sun climbing over the distant hills, illuminating the familiar shapes of homes, streets, and riverbanks with gentle clarity. The earliest leaders were often those who had spent the most time observing the settlement's rhythms, people who had learned the river's language, the movement of trade, the subtle needs of families, and the delicate patterns of work and rest. These individuals did not demand attention, nor did they seek power. Instead, they guided with quiet example, offering advice in measured tones, mediating disputes softly, and teaching through demonstration rather than decree. Their authority was gentle, rooted in trust, respect, and a slow accumulation of wisdom, and it was recognized naturally by neighbors, artisans, and traders alike. Decision-making took a deliberate pace. Matters of trade, irrigation, and communal projects were discussed in circles beneath the shade of trees or near softly glowing hearths. Each voice was heard, every perspective considered, and resolutions emerged not from haste, but from patient observation, careful discussion, and subtle negotiation. Even disagreements were approached gently, with understanding of the other's intentions, fostering a culture of collaboration and mutual respect. The slow, measured process ensured that decisions were sustainable, well-reasoned, and accepted by all, reinforcing the calm rhythm that defined the settlement's daily life. The role of early leadership also extended to the protection and maintenance of the walls, streets, and common spaces. Elders and respected community members oversaw repairs, coordinated work parties, and ensured the resources were shared fairly. Tools, materials, and labor were organized with care, allowing each task to be completed efficiently without disturbing the calm flow of life. Children observed these activities, learning not only the practical skills of building and maintenance, but also the deeper lessons of responsibility, foresight, and community cooperation. The gentle orchestration of effort became a form of education, teaching the next generation the subtle art of balanced leadership. Trade and interaction with travelers required additional wisdom from these early leaders. Decisions about which goods to accept, how to maintain peaceful relations, and how to integrate new knowledge into local practices were made slowly and thoughtfully. Leaders guided artisans and farmers in experimenting with new techniques, ensuring that adaptation occurred harmoniously rather than chaotically. Every new item, story, or method was observed, discussed, and incorporated in a way that strengthened the settlement without overwhelming its established rhythms. Leadership became a careful act of stewardship, nurturing growth while maintaining stability. The river remained central to leadership, offering lessons in patience, timing, and gentle control. Leaders learned to interpret the seasonal rise and fall of water, to plan irrigation and planting cycles, and to coordinate fishing and foraging activities. They guided the community in respecting the river's moods, avoiding flood-prone areas, and maximizing its gifts without causing harm. In these acts, the subtle interplay of natural observation and human decision-making became a core aspect of early governance. teaching that wisdom lay in understanding, not domination. Social ceremonies and gatherings were also subtly influenced by early leaders. They organized quiet communal celebrations, ritual observances, and storytelling sessions, ensuring that everyone, from the youngest child to the eldest elder, could participate. These occasions were slow, rhythmic, and calming, blending song, story, and movement in a way that reinforced cultural continuity. Leaders set the tone, modeling patience, humility, and respect for tradition, while also allowing innovation to emerge organically through the contributions of others. In this way, leadership became an art of guiding without forcing, shaping without controlling. Conflict resolution was perhaps one of the most important aspects of early leadership. Disputes over land, resources, or trade were handled carefully in private or in small circles, with attention to fairness and long-term consequences. Leaders taught negotiation through example, encouraging empathy, compromise, and understanding. The goal was never to impose authority abruptly, but to cultivate trust and mutual respect, ensuring that the settlement remained united and harmonious. In this careful approach, the people learned the value of measured communication, deliberate reflection, and gentle problems. Children, silently absorbed these lessons naturally. They watched their elders listen, speak softly, and guide with patience. Learning that influence came from care and insight rather than loud assertion or fear, they began to practice small acts of leadership in play, mediating disagreements over games, organizing tasks and cooperative activities, and slowly internalizing the rhythms of communal decision. Through repetition and observation, the seeds of future governance were planted, growing slowly alongside the physical expansion of the town. Evening rituals became intertwined with leadership and social cohesion. Fires glowed softly in central courtyards, and leaders shared stories of past seasons, of challenges overcome, and of the gentle wisdom that had guided the settlement's growth. Children listened intently, absorbing not just the tales, but the cadence, the pauses, and the careful pacing of speech. Songs and soft instruments accompanied these gatherings, reinforcing the rhythmic harmony of life. The presence of calm, thoughtful leadership in these spaces reassured everyone, embedding a sense of security, continuity, and shared purpose. As the settlement matured, early leaders began to envision the long-term development of neighborhoods, irrigation, and trade routes. Plans were made slowly, adjusted as circumstances changed, and always informed by observation of the natural environment and the subtle rhythms of human activity. Decisions about expansion were guided by balance and foresight, ensuring that growth did not disrupt harmony. Leadership was thus both practical and philosophical, a slow, deliberate art of maintaining equilibrium while nurturing potential. The rise of early leadership also marked the emergence of subtle social structures. Families came to understand their roles within the larger community. Artisans coordinated their efforts, and traders adjusted their practices to fit communal needs. Even the river, the markets, and the walls were seen as components of a complex but gentle system, and leadership served to maintain its balance. In this interconnected world, influence and authority were measured, deliberate, and calm, reinforcing the sleep-inducing rhythm that defined daily life along the river. By nightfall, the settlement rested under the quiet guidance of these early leaders. Homes glowed softly with firelight, children dreamed of gentle rivers and meandering streets, and the elders reflected on the slow, deliberate growth of their community. Leadership had become an invisible rhythm woven into the fabric of everyday life, sustaining harmony, teaching patience, and guiding the settlement toward a future that would one day bear the name Babylon. And in the soft lull of evening, with the river murmuring gently nearby, the people learned that true leadership was not a force of power, but a steady, guiding presence that nurtured calm, order, and quiet prosperity. As the gentle rhythm of life continued to flow along the river, the settlement began to experience a soft, steady flourishing of trade and crafts. The marketplace, once a small, quiet space, grew into a network of calm activity, where merchants and artisans exchanged goods with care. Not haste, their actions deliberate, unhurried, and soothing to watch. The soft murmur of conversation, the gentle clinking of clay pots, and the rustle of fabrics combined into a serene symphony, guiding the people through their days and evenings with a rhythm that was at once productive and calming. Artisans practiced their crafts with slow, deliberate movements, shaping clay on simple wheels or by hand smoothing surfaces with gentle, pressure and carving patterns that reflected the flow of the river, the sway of the reeds, or the curve of the distant hills. Each pot, jar, or figurine was created with patience. Every curve and line intentional, every decoration carefully considered. Children watched and imitated, learning the subtle lessons of patience, focus, and quiet creativity. Over time, the repetition of these actions became meditative, turning everyday labor into an artful, rhythmic experience that soothed both mind and body. Weaving also became a source of calm pride within the settlement. Reeds and fibers, harvested from the riverbanks, were woven into mats, baskets, and simple garments. Patterns were repeated slowly, allowing the mind to settle into the rhythm of the hands, each thread connecting with the next in a deliberate, comforting order. The soft scratching of reeds against one another and the gentle tension of fibers under careful fingers formed a background hum, a sound both productive and hypnotic. Children joined in, mimicking patterns, experimenting with color, and discovering the satisfaction of creating something functional and beautiful in harmony with the natural world. The marketplace reflected the calm growth of trade. Mats were laid in orderly rows, jars arranged in careful clusters, and fabrics displayed with thoughtful attention. Travelers from distant lands arrived quietly, gliding along the river in boats or moving along well-worn paths, bringing polished stones, fragrant spices, dyes, and finely crafted tools. The people approached these newcomers with gentle curiosity, examining each object with care, integrating what was useful, and learning from the techniques and materials offered. Each exchange reinforced the town's patient rhythm, teaching observation, appreciation, and slow assimilation of new knowledge. Trade influenced not only material life, but also social interaction. Families gathered to discuss new goods, compare tools, and observe innovations in weaving. Pottery or fishing techniques, soft laughter, and quiet conversation accompanied each transaction, creating a gentle backdrop to the practical exchange of goods. Knowledge of distant lands, techniques, and materials spread gradually, absorbed by those with attentive eyes and steady hands. The marketplace became more than a space for trade. It was a slow, immersive classroom, teaching the community the arts of observation, adaptation, and measured experimentation. The river continued to support this flourishing. Boats moved softly along its calm currents, delivering goods from upstream or distant settlements. Fishermen brought their catches, merchants brought supplies, and travelers brought seeds, dyes, and small treasures. All movements were deliberate and measured, creating a slow but steady flow of resources that enriched the town without overwhelming it. Children learned by observing these patterns, understanding the importance of timing, balance, and coordination. They saw that trade was not only about material gain, but also about the careful, rhythmic exchange of knowledge and culture. Crafts and trade also supported seasonal festivals, simple celebrations, and quiet communal rituals. Families prepared small offerings of woven mats, clay vessels, or harvested foods, exchanging them with neighbors or placing them in quiet spaces near the river or hair. Songs, soft chants, and gentle drumming accompanied these occasions, reinforcing the shared rhythm of life. Elders guided the younger generation in these rituals, showing that even in celebration, patience, attention, and respect for the community's patterns were essential. The festivals were never hurried. They were immersive, calming experiences that strengthened bonds and nurtured a collective sense of harmony. As skills improved, artisans began experimenting with new designs inspired by both local tradition and foreign influence. Pottery became more intricate, mats more complex, and tools more refined. Traders brought exotic spices, polished stones, fine fabrics, and rare dyes, encouraging subtle innovation. These new materials were integrated slowly, their potential explored carefully through observation, repetition, and shared experimentation. Knowledge was passed gently from master to apprentice, parent to child, creating a slow, enduring cycle of skill transmission that reinforced both individual mastery and communal cohesion. Evening in the marketplace carried a special tranquility. Merchants packed their goods with care, families returned to their homes along softly winding streets, and artisans tidied their workshops, leaving tools and materials ready for the next day. Fires glowed softly in homes and courtyards, illuminating the quiet faces of children, elders, and workers alike. The sound of the river, blending with the faint rustle of leaves, soft bird calls, and gentle movement of water through irrigation channels, created a calming symphony. The entire settlement seemed to breathe as one, the pulse of trade and craft synchronizing with the rhythms of nature and the river's slow flow. Learning and education were subtly woven into these daily activities. Children observed, repeated, and experimented, absorbing lessons from observation and gentle guidance rather than formal instruction. The rhythm of craftwork shaping clay, weaving fibers, polishing tools taught focus and mindfulness. The rhythm of trade examining goods, negotiating exchanges, organizing resources taught careful assessment, patience, and strategy. Each task, each interaction contributed to the gradual shaping of thoughtful, capable individuals, quietly preparing them for future roles within the growing settlement. Animals remained companions in the rhythm of life. Goats, sheep, and cattle moved calmly through the fields and gardens. Birds nested along the riverbanks and among rooftops, and dogs followed families in soft, protective observation. Their presence reinforced the quiet, measured pace of the town, teaching Kari responsibility and respect for living creatures. Even the natural environment, trees, reeds, and the river itself interacted with trade and crafts, providing materials, inspiration, and a gentle reminder that growth, creativity, and prosperity were all part of a delicate, interconnected system. Nightfall brought the settlement to rest. The river glimmered softly under the moonlight, reflecting the calm glow of homes and fires. The marketplace lay silent, mats rolled and jars stacked, fabrics folded neatly. Families settled indoors. Children drifted into sleep, and artisans closed their workshops, leaving behind the gentle residue of creation and trade. The rhythm of life continued, a slow, unbroken flow, linking river, town, families, and crafts into a seamless, soothing pattern. The settlement had learned that prosperity was not a sudden rush, but a patient, deliberate unfolding, a harmonious blend of work, art, and exchange that loved the mind and heart alike. Through this steady flourishing, the town grew stronger and more cohesive, laying the foundations for a civilization that would one day be known as Babylon. Trade and craft, intertwined with observation, patience, and gentle guidance, created not only material wealth, but also a culture of calm, careful growth. And as the river whispered its eternal lullaby, the people slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that each day, each task, each gentle act of creation or exchange was part of a larger, slow, and soothing rhythm that carried them toward a future both steady and remarkable. The town, now more established along the gentle curves of the river, began to discover the subtle joy of expression through arts and rituals. Life was no longer only work and survival. It carried a softer rhythm, an unfolding pattern of creativity, reflection, and celebration. These early forms of art and ritual were not hurried or extravagant. They were deliberate, calming, and soothing, woven into the daily life of families, children, and artisans alike. Each action, each movement, and each sound was soft, intentional, and reflective, creating a quiet harmony that nurtured both the mind and spirit. In the early mornings, as the sun rose slowly above the river, soft chants and gentle songs were heard drifting from the courtyards of families and small groups. These melodies were simple yet elegant, created to honor the rising sun, the flowing river, and the gentle life around them. Children hummed along, imitating the soft notes, their small voices blending with the sound of the water and the rustle of reeds. The repetition of these songs brought a comforting rhythm to each day, and the cadence of voice and motion created a meditative flow. Preparing the settlement for calm work and thoughtful observation, clay and pottery, already essential for practical use, became vehicles for artistic expression. Artisans began to add gentle patterns, soft engravings, and delicate shapes to their vessels. Some designs mirrored the meandering river, others captured the subtle sway of reeds, the delicate curve of a leaf, or the quiet grace of a bird in flight. Children observed and learned, tracing their fingers over the impressions, copying forms in soft clay of their own. The act of shaping, smoothing, and decorating became a form of meditation, teaching focus, patience, and a quiet appreciation for beauty in everyday life. Weaving also carried a rhythm of creativity. Simple mats evolved into carefully patterned textiles, each line and shape chosen with intention. Strips of color were blended softly, creating gentle gradients and subtle contrasts. The rhythm of hands moving over fibers mirrored the quiet flow of water in the river, and the sound of reed against reed became a soothing accompaniment to conversation, song, and reflection. Children learned through repetition, feeling the fibers under their fingers, and understanding that even the simplest material could become a form of soft, enduring beauty. Rituals became intertwined with daily life, reinforcing both practical knowledge and spiritual awareness. Families observed the cycles of planting, harvesting, and fishing, marking each season with small ceremonies of gratitude. Simple offerings, woven mats, clay jars, grains, or flowers were placed along the riverbank or in shared courtyards. These gestures were quiet and deliberate, soft acts of acknowledgement for the gifts of nature and the cooperation of neighbors. Children participated naturally, feeling the calm, rhythmic pulse of giving and receiving, learning that life was a gentle balance of care, attention, and gratitude. The marketplace, to reflect it, artistry and ritual. Traders displayed goods with attention not only to function but to visual harmony. Baskets of fruit were arranged in gentle patterns. Pots with intricate carvings were grouped thoughtfully, and fabrics flowed softly across wooden tables. These arrangements, subtle and unhurried, transformed the marketplace into a space of gentle beauty, a place where observation and appreciation became part of the daily rhythm. The soft sound of bartering, mixed with laughter, songs, and quiet conversation, reinforced a sense of shared culture and calm interaction. Music played a continuous role in life, emerging in unexpected corners. Soft instruments created from reeds, clay, or string were played gently during meals, work, and rituals. The rhythm was slow and measured, often imitating natural sounds, the babble of water, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds. Children learned to play alongside adults, absorbing not just technique, but the sense of calm, continuity, and purpose in every note. Music became a medium of both education and relaxation, teaching subtle coordination, mindfulness, and the quiet pleasure of shared expression. Storytelling, too, evolved as an essential art form. Elders shared tales of the river, the seasons, and distant lands in measured, soothing tones. Stories included lessons about cooperation, wisdom, and patience, often intertwined with gentle exaggeration or playful humor. Children listened, absorbed the cadence of speech, and gradually learned to recount these stories themselves, their small voices echoing the soft rhythm of the elders. In this way, narrative became both entertainment and education, a vehicle for cultural continuity and a lullaby for restless minds. Ceremonial spaces emerged within the settlement, small and intimate areas set aside for reflection and communal observance. Soft mats or stone platforms were arranged thoughtfully, often near the river, under the shade of carefully planted trees. Families gathered for seasonal events or simple quiet reflection, their presence measured and deliberate. Firelight flickered gently in the evenings, illuminating soft faces and casting calming shadows across the courtyards. The rhythm of these gatherings was slow, meditative, and deeply soothing, embedding a sense of continuity, harmony, and quiet joy. Even daily work incorporated elements of art and ritual. Harvesting was done with careful attention, a soft song accompanying the collection of grains. Pottery was shaped with thought and respect for the materials. Weaving and crafting were performed with attention to form, texture, and subtle beauty. Even trade and negotiation were approached with deliberate tone, patience, and a soft attentiveness to others' needs. In every action, small or large, the people of the settlement discovered the calming, meditative rhythm of thoughtful participation, a pattern that carried through both labor and leisure. Children were naturally drawn into these practices, observing parents, artisans, and elders. They learned not through formal instruction, but through careful attention, imitation, and gentle encouragement. They discovered that creativity, patience, and quiet reflection were inseparable from daily life. Small tasks decorating clay, arranging baskets, weaving mats, or participating in rituals taught mindfulness, respect, and the joy of deliberate action. Each activity became a soft lesson, preparing them for adult roles while reinforcing the settlement's serene rhythm. Animals and nature are woven seamlessly into artistic expression. Birds, goats, sheep, and even dogs became subjects of observation, appearing in carvings, weavings, and simple illustrations. Reeds, clay, and stones were arranged in patterns inspired by flowing water, swaying grasses, and the curve of distant hills. The people learned to translate the subtle movements of the natural world into soft, tangible expressions, connecting their daily lives with observation, creativity, and reflection. The environment became both teacher and canvas, guiding the development of calm, focused skills. Evenings were particularly suitable for reflection and art. As fires glowed softly and the river reflected the moonlight, families gathered together, children listened to stories, hummed tunes, and created small artistic pieces under the gentle guidance of elders. The air was filled with soft scents of reeds, clay, and baked bread, blending into a comforting ambiance. The quiet rhythm of these evenings allowed thoughts to settle, muscles to relax, and minds to drift gently toward rest. The integration of art, ritual, and reflection created a pervasive sense of calm, soothing the body and mind while strengthening bonds within the community. Through these slow, deliberate practices, the town began to cultivate a rich culture rooted in observation, patience, and gentle creativity. The river's ever-present influence shaped the cadence of life, guiding artisans, traders, families, and children alike in subtle, soothing ways. Rituals and artistic expression were not separate from daily work. They were woven seamlessly into the rhythm of life, providing soft structure, quiet pleasure, and meditative repetition. Every sound, movement, and creation reinforced the calm, enduring pace that would define the settlement for generations to come. As the moon rose high above the river, casting silver light across soft rooftops and gently flowing water, the people of the settlement drifted into rest. Fires burned low, songs faded, and children's dreams carried them through imaginary journeys along the riverbanks, into fields, and through patterns of light and shadow. Art and ritual, soft and measured, had become a lullaby for the mind, a guide to harmony, and a gentle preparation for the day to come. And so, under the steady gaze of the stars and the eternal whisper of the river, the town continued to grow in beauty.com and deliberate rhythm, building a foundation for the enduring culture of Babylon. In the softly flowing settlement, life continued with gentle predictability, guided by the steady influence of elders who had quietly observed the unfolding rhythms of the town for many years. These elders were not leaders in the commanding sense, nor were they separated by status or authority. Their wisdom was born of experience, patience, and subtle observation, cultivated over years of attending to the river, the crops, the animals, and the people themselves. Children, adults, and craftsmen alike recognized the depth of their understanding, seeking advice not out of necessity, but out of respect for the calm, steady insight the elders offered. The wisdom of elders manifested in many forms. They advised on planting cycles, observing the slow changes of seasons and the gentle rise and fall of the river's water. They guided artisans, offering suggestions for shaping clay, weaving reeds, or carving wood with care and patience. They mediated disputes softly, listening to all sides and offering guidance in measured tones, allowing the community to reach decisions naturally without force. In every instance, their counsel reinforced a culture of calm, reflective action, teaching the value of observation over haste and deliberation over impulsivity. Evenings often carried the soft cadence of elder guidance. Around quiet fires or in shady courtyards, elders shared stories of past seasons, challenges overcome, and subtle lessons learned. These narratives were not hurried. They unfolded slowly, sentence by sentence, with pauses that allowed reflection and absorption. Children listened closely, their eyes wide, their breathing slowing in rhythm with the stories. Adults absorbed the lessons more quietly, integrating insights into their own decisions about trade, craft, and daily life. The veritoni, the gentle pacing, and the careful choice of words served as a form of meditation, soothing listeners while teaching. Elders also played a pivotal role in the careful transmission of knowledge. Craftsmen and traders consulted them for advice on techniques and materials. Farmers observed the patterns of planting and harvesting, adjusting their methods under the gentle guidance of these experienced individuals. Children, naturally observant, watched how elders moved, how they interacted with the river and land, and how they addressed challenges with calm deliberation through observation and repetition. Young members of the community internalized principles of patience, foresight, and quiet leadership, ensuring the continuity of skill and wisdom across generations. In addition to practical guidance, elders nurtured spiritual and cultural continuity. Simple rituals, quietly performed, were explained with careful words and thoughtful gestures. Families learned when to offer small tokens of gratitude along the riverbank, how to participate in seasonal festivals, and the meaning behind the gentle songs that accompanied daily life. Children imitated these actions naturally, feeling the rhythm of participation and reflection without instruction. Over time, these small gestures became deeply ingrained, creating a cultural fabric that combined artistry, ritual, and quiet reverence for the world around them. Observation of the natural environment was a core aspect of elder wisdom. They recognized the soft cues in the river's flow, the movement of birds, the changing patterns of wind, and the subtle shifts in the soil. These observations informed planting schedules, fishing practices, and the careful allocation of resources. Children watched elders walking slowly along the riverbanks, noting water levels, collecting clay, or observing reeds. Every step was deliberate, every gesture purposeful, teaching that understanding nature required attention, patience, and respect. The rhythm of learning through observation became a soothing, immersive experience, forming the foundation of practical knowledge for the community. Conflict resolution remained another domain where elder wisdom guided the settlement. Disagreements between neighbors, artisans, or traders were addressed softly and deliberately. Elders listened first, weighing perspectives, considering history, and anticipating outcomes. Then, in calm tones, they offered guidance or suggested compromise, allowing the parties involved to reconcile without harsh words or rash decisions. The community learned slowly that peace and harmony were maintained not through force, but through careful reflection, empathy, and deliberate communication. Lessons reinforced daily by the steady presence of elder counsel. The arts, too, were influenced by elders' insight. Pottery designs, weaving patterns, and simple musical compositions were encouraged to reflect calm, deliberate rhythms. Elders would demonstrate a gentle stroke on clay, a soft twist of fibers, or a slow beat on a reed instrument, emphasizing harmony, balance, and thoughtful execution. Children, observing and imitating, developed skills naturally, internalizing both technique and the calming cadence that accompanied it. Art and craft became not only functional but meditative, instilling serenity in makers and observers alike. Trade practices were also gently guided by elders. When travelers arrived with goods, elders advised on their integration into the settlement's economy, ensuring that innovation complemented rather than disrupted existing rhythms. They encouraged careful examination of materials, deliberate trial of techniques, and thoughtful adaptation of new knowledge. Through this guidance, commerce became a calm, reflective process rather than a hurried competition. Observing these interactions, children learned the principles of negotiation, fairness, and attentive observation, skills vital for the ongoing health and harmony of the town. The elders' influence extended to environmental care. They taught families to conserve water, tend to animals with care, and cultivate crops with mindfulness. Soft lessons were given in repetition, not as instruction, but through demonstration and gentle correction. Children mimicked these actions, discovering the satisfaction of contributing responsibly to communal life. Respect for the environment became a natural habit, reinforced daily by the elders' patient, observant presence, and by the quiet rhythms of river, soil, and sky. Evenings carried a particular serenity under the elders' guidance. Fires burned softly, illuminating calm faces and casting long shadows across courtyards. Families gathered, children drifted into slumber, and adults reflected on the day's work in gentle lessons. Stories and songs intertwined. Soft instruments provided rhythm, and the river's whispering sound wove through the settlement. Elders' voices, gentle and steady, became the rhythm against which life flowed, ensuring that even the busiest day ended in calm reflection and preparation for the next. Through these practices, the settlement thrived in balance, order, and calm understanding. Knowledge, skill, and wisdom were passed seamlessly from one generation to the next. Children internalized lessons of patience, creativity, and foresight, preparing them for future roles in trade, governance, or craftsmanship. Elders, quietly present, maintained the rhythm of life, connecting river, land, and people in an unbroken cycle of observation, reflection, and careful action. Their influence created a gentle structure, a calming cadence that defined daily life, and a foundation for the enduring culture that would one day be known as Babylon. As the moon rose above the river, casting silver light across rooftops, courtyards, and gently flowing water, the settlement rested under the steady rhythm of elder guidance. Children dreamed softly of weaving, fishing, and songs. Adults reflected on subtle lessons learned, and the river continued its quiet, eternal flow. The wisdom of elders, woven through every action, word, and rhythm, became the invisible heartbeat of the town, ensuring calm, harmony and continuity across generations, and preparing the people for the slow unfolding of greatness that lay ahead. With the gentle guidance of elders and the steady rhythm of daily life, the settlement along the river slowly began to grow outward, expanding its walls and neighborhoods in a measured, deliberate manner. This expansion was not hurried or chaotic. It was a careful unfolding, shaped by observation of the land, the river, and the people themselves. Every wall built, every street laid, and every new home raised was done with consideration, ensuring that harmony, safety, and balance remained central to the community-esque way of life. Children, adults, and elders alike participated in this slow process, each contributing to the quiet transformation of the town. The walls, initially modest and practical, grew steadily stronger and taller. Stones and clay were carefully collected, shaped, and stacked by hands trained over years of quiet practice. Every placement was deliberate, each stone balanced and aligned, forming barriers that were both protective and aesthetically calming. Craftsmen worked side by side with families, sharing tools and knowledge, their movements their voices low, creating a rhythm that was both productive and meditative. Children watched closely, imitating the gentle placement of each stone, learning the subtle lessons of care, patience, and precision. Neighborhoods began to expand outward, following the natural curves of the river and the soft undulations of the land. Streets were laid with thought, providing easy access to markets, homes, workshops, and communal spaces. Courtyards were placed in the center of clusters of homes, offering quiet areas for reflection, social interaction, and gentle play. Families organized their living spaces with attention to comfort, utility, and beauty, ensuring that each new addition complemented the existing rhythm of the town. Even the placement of wells, storage spaces, and gardens was done with care, considering the flow of people, water, and daily activities. Trade routes within the settlement adapted to these expansions. Narrow paths along the river became gentle thoroughfares for boats, while small streets between neighborhoods allowed quiet movement of goods, animals, and people. Traders and artisans adjusted naturally, walking with soft steps, observing the patterns of others, and maintaining the calm pace of commerce. Children, naturally curious, moved among these spaces with quiet fascination, learning how each area of the town served a purpose and how careful planning made daily life easier, safer, and more harmonious. The walls served not only as protection, but also as a gentle guide for expansion. Neighborhoods were built within sight of the river and the central marketplace, preserving the town's rhythm and cohesion. Gates were constructed with care, allowing easy passage for travelers and merchants while maintaining a sense of security. These gates, strong yet graceful, became symbolic thresholds, marking both physical and metaphorical transitions from the bustling heart of the settlement to quieter, more private areas. Families passing through them learned patience and attention, observing the measured flow of movement and the soft rituals that accompanied entry and exit. Construction of homes followed similar principles. Clay, reeds, and timber were shaped slowly and intentionally, ensuring durability while preserving a calming aesthetic. Roofs were sloped to capture rainfall, courtyards were open to sunlight and breeze, and small gardens were integrated naturally into the living spaces. Families, observing elders, and craftsmen learned the rhythm of building, experiencing both satisfaction and gentle focus. Every brick placed, every reed woven, every timber secured was an exercise in mindfulness, reinforcing the meditative quality of labor within the community. As neighborhoods expanded, communal spaces became increasingly important. Courtyards, small shrines, and gathering areas were positioned to encourage interaction, reflection, and quiet recreation. Families congregated to share meals, tell stories, or hum soft tunes while children played nearby. Even the movement of animals, goats, sheep, and domestic fowl was carefully coordinated, ensuring that their presence added to the sense of rhythm rather than disturbance. These shared spaces reinforced the calm cadence of life, providing both function and serenity to the expanding town. Trade and craft practices adapted naturally to the growth of neighborhoods. Workshops and markets were arranged to maintain accessibility while preserving order. Artisans and merchants observed patterns of movement, adjusting the placement of goods, tools, and stations to enhance efficiency and maintain tranquility. Children followed these patterns, learning how work and commerce could coexist with calm, creativity, and reflection. Every new household or shop integrated into this rhythm, contributing to the steady, deliberate expansion of the settlement. The river continued to guide neighborhood development. Homes were constructed to maintain proximity to water, providing irrigation, fish, and gentle aesthetic influence. Bridges, small docks, and levees were added gradually, each designed to enhance movement and maintain the slow flow of daily life. Children observed these structures with curiosity, learning the importance of balance, timing, and foresight. The river's soft murmur became a steady companion to the town's growth, offering lessons in patience, adaptability, and careful planning. Evenings were enriched by the quiet presence of newly expanded neighborhoods. As fires glowed softly in homes, shadows stretched across narrow streets, and families settled in their courtyards. The rhythm of life remained gentle and continuous. Stories were shared, songs were hummed, and quiet reflection was encouraged. Children's breathing slowed, matching the calm cadence of evening rituals. The careful placement of walls, homes, and communal spaces created an environment where work, rest, and play existed in harmonious balance. And where expansion did not disturb the meditative flow of life, elders continued to observe and guide this growth. Their attention to subtle details, spacing of homes, placement of wells, integration of gardens ensured that expansion maintained the town's core rhythms. Their influence reinforced the importance of patience, observation, and deliberate action. Children internalized these lessons naturally, recognizing that thoughtful construction, gentle cooperation, and awareness of environment were essential to the town's enduring harmony. In this way, neighborhoods grew not only in size, but also in cohesion, beauty, and calm purpose. Through these measured expansions, the settlement laid a foundation for future prosperity. Walls and homes, streets and courtyards, docks and gardens, each element contributed to a gentle, enduring rhythm of life. Trade, craft, ritual, and observation continued seamlessly within the expanding framework. Children, observing every detail, internalized lessons of patience, balance, and careful action. As the moon rose high above the river, casting soft light on rooftops, walls, and flowing water, the town rested in quiet harmony. Ready for the next stages of its slow, deliberate journey toward becoming the great city of Babylon. As the settlement expanded, stretching its walls and neighborhoods along the gentle bends of the river, the need for structure and harmony became increasingly clear. Life had grown in scale, and with more people, more trade, and more activity, it became necessary to establish a shared understanding of expectations, responsibilities, and consequences. This process was gradual, deliberate, and careful, guided by the steady wisdom of elders and shaped by the soft rhythms of everyday life. Law and order did not arrive suddenly, nor did it feel imposed. It emerged naturally, flowing with the cadence of the town, like a river adjusting to gentle shifts in terrain. The earliest rules were simple and practical, rooted in observation and experience. Families learned to respect boundaries, ensuring that courtyards, gardens, and shared spaces remained orderly. Children observed these practices daily, understanding that cooperation and consideration allowed the community to function smoothly. Disputes over land, water, or trade were resolved through calm discussion, often led by elders who emphasized fairness, patience, and deliberate judgment. The process of negotiation itself was a lesson, teaching all involved the value of listening, reflecting, and approaching disagreements with a steady mind. Trade and commerce required particular attention. With more merchants arriving from distant lands, it became important to regulate exchanges, protect property, and ensure that promises were kept. Rules emerged slowly, based on customary practice rather than rigid enforcement. Merchants learned to trust one another through repeated interactions, observing the consequences of broken agreements and the benefits of honesty. Children watched these exchanges unfold, learning that stability and cooperation were essential to prosperity. The marketplace itself became a living classroom where soft lessons in fairness, responsibility, and patience were absorbed through careful observation. Elders also guided the development of communal safety. The placement of walls, gates, and lookout points reflected a measured approach to security, allowing the settlement to protect itself without stifling the gentle flow of daily life. Residents were encouraged to move thoughtfully, to be aware of their surroundings, and to look after one another in small, deliberate ways. Patrols along the walls or near key areas were performed quietly, without urgency or alarm, reinforcing a calm vigilance. Children learned to participate naturally, accompanying adults in quiet observation and small acts of care, internalizing lessons of responsibility and awareness. Conflict resolution became a refined practice, a slow and deliberate art. When disagreements arose, elders or respected community members would gather all involved, ensuring that each voice was heard. The discussion unfolded patiently, each participant reflecting before speaking, learning to articulate concerns and consider others' perspectives. Solutions were often achieved through compromise, mutual understanding, or thoughtful correction rather than punishment. Over time, these practices instilled a culture of patience, empathy, and careful reasoning. The settlement's inhabitants discovered that law and order were not enforced through fear, but through the gentle, persistent rhythm of shared values. Written communication began to support this emerging system. Marks and clay tablets recorded transactions, agreements, and simple rules. These symbols, carefully impressed with deliberate strokes, provided both clarity and permanence. Children observed the process, tracing symbols with soft fingers and gradually internalizing the meaning of order, record keeping, and accountability. These records were stored thoughtfully, often in shaded areas near the river or in small communal spaces, ensuring accessibility and respect. The act of documenting, slow and methodical, reinforced the calm, deliberate pace of life and the careful cultivation of knowledge. Even daily routines incorporated elements of law and order. Families tended crops according to shared understanding, distributing water and resources in measured ways. Craftsmen maintained tools and workshops with consistent attention, ensuring that workspaces were safe and productive. Traders organized goods with care, maintaining clear systems for exchange and storage. Every action, though small, contributed to the larger rhythm of societal harmony. Children internalized these practices naturally, observing how deliberate patterns of behavior led to a stable, predictable, and gentle environment. Festivals and gatherings also reflected emerging rules. Rituals were performed with order and attention, ensuring that each step, each offering, and each song followed a consistent rhythm. Elders guided participation, emphasizing respect for space, time, and the roles of others. Children absorbed these lessons without the need for formal instruction, understanding through gentle repetition that structured activity could coexist with joy and celebration. The balance of freedom and structure became an essential principle, reinforcing calm and order in both small daily actions and larger communal events. The river continued to provide a natural framework for law and order. Paths along its banks, docks, and bridges required careful navigation. Fishermen followed patterns that respected one another's space, observing the subtle flow of currents and tides. Boats moved with measured pace, and children learned from elders the importance of timing, coordination, and attention. This natural discipline merged seamlessly with human rules, creating a rhythm that guided both work and leisure, reinforcing the town's growing culture of predictable, gentle order. Evenings brought reflection and consolidation of these lessons. Families gathered quietly in courtyards, children listened to soft stories, and elders recounted examples of careful judgment, fair trade, and thoughtful cooperation. The glow of fires and the silver reflection of moonlight on the river created a tranquil ambience, reinforcing the sense that law and order were natural, gentle, and beneficial. Sleep arrived as elite, aided by the reassurance of predictable routines and the steady presence of wisdom guiding every interaction. Over time, these practices established a foundation for a cohesive and harmonious society. The settlement became more resilient, capable of growth and adaptation without losing its calm rhythm. Children internalized principles of patience, fairness, and observation, ensuring continuity of knowledge across generations. Trade, crafts, rituals, and communal life functioned together in a deliberate, cadence. Every action, from placing a brick to negotiating an exchange, contributed to the enduring structure of society. The settlement learned that order did not demand harshness. It thrived in quiet reflection, steady observation, and deliberate, unhurried action. As the moon rose above the river, casting soft light across walls, streets, and courtyards, the town rested under the assurance of its slow, thoughtful order. Children drifted into dreams of markets, workshops, and quiet negotiation. Adults reflected on the day's careful interactions, and elders, ever patient, watched the rhythm of life continue unbroken. Through deliberate observation, gentle guidance, and calm practice, law and order became the invisible pulse of the settlement, preparing the people for future growth, stability, and the enduring culture that would flourish as Babylon. In every quiet movement, every careful action, and every soft-spoken word, the town discovered the profound peace that comes from living in harmony with rules, nature, and one another. With walls expanded, neighborhoods flourishing, and law and order quietly guiding daily life, the settlement along the river began to lay the subtle foundations of what would one day become the great city of Babylon. This transformation was not sudden, dramatic, or forceful. It unfolded slowly as generations of families, children, artisans, traders, and elders contributed their steady efforts to the rhythm of life. Each day, each task, and each interaction carried forward lessons in patience, observation, and gentle foresight, creating a complex tapestry of culture, knowledge, and enduring community. The river remained central, its flowing waters guiding both practical and symbolic aspects of growth. Fishermen moved with careful attention, children followed the gentle rhythms of boats, and elders monitored patterns of water, flood, and recession. Irrigation channels extended slowly, carved with deliberate care, bringing water to fields and gardens farther from the central settlement. Crops flourished under this measured guidance, and the town learned the quiet satisfaction of sustainable cultivation. Families took pride in their gardens and harvests, yet they performed all tasks with deliberate softness, preserving a calm cadence that harmonized with nature's own flow. Trade and craft continued to evolve. Marketplaces became slightly more complex, yet remained organized with thoughtful care. Merchants displayed wares with aesthetic balance, arranging baskets, fabrics, and pottery in ways that were both practical and visually soothing. Craftsmen refined techniques, producing clay vessels, woven mats, and tools with meticulous attention to detail. Music, soft and meditative, accompanied daily labor, reinforcing a rhythm that kept children attentive and adults calm. Apprentices learned patiently, observing each careful motion, internalizing both the skill and the gentle pace necessary for mastery. Architecture also began to reflect ambition alongside practical.com. Homes and communal buildings grew taller, courtyards more expansive, and streets more organized. Timber, clay, and stone were handled slowly, deliberately, ensuring longevity. Every brick placed and every beam secured was part of a soft, deliberate choreography, echoing the settlement's long-standing rhythm of care. Children observed these constructions as though reading a story of patience and perseverance, absorbing the lesson that greatness was built slowly, brick by careful brick, action by deliberate action. The riverbanks themselves became centers of knowledge, small learning spaces tucked under trees or along gently sloping embankments allowed elders to pass on wisdom. Children learned about river currents, fish species, soil composition, and seasonal shifts. These lessons were shared in measured tones, sometimes sung, sometimes spoken softly, always with a rhythm that encouraged reflection and absorption. Young minds were trained to notice subtle patterns in the natural world, preparing them for the complex responsibilities of adulthood. The settlement's spiritual and cultural practices deepened alongside material growth. Seasonal festivals, songs, and rituals were woven seamlessly into everyday life. Offerings were made with care, crafted vessels were used in ceremonies, and songs carried gentle instruction. Children participated naturally, observing elders, humming softly, and internalizing values of gratitude, patience, and mindfulness. Art, music, and ritual were no longer separate from work or play. They became the quiet backbone of culture, reinforcing calm, cohesion, and gentle continuity. Trade networks extended further with time. Travelers arrived from distant lands, carrying spices, metals, and fabrics. Elders observed, guiding the integration of new goods while maintaining the community's rhythm. Traders learned from this process, balancing ambition with care, speed with deliberation, and novelty with respect for established patterns. Children watched these interactions as a living lesson, absorbing principles of negotiation, fairness, and measured risk. Every transaction, though small, contributed to the subtle growth of the town's economic and cultural influence. Even the arts of storytelling, music, and record-keeping tales of rivers, forests, and distant cities grew in complexity while maintaining a measured cadence. Soft clay tablets recorded transactions, agreements, and knowledge. Their careful inscriptions preserved for future reflection. Musical instruments were refined, patterns of melody were harmonized with natural sounds, and songs of labor, ritual, and play provided both education and relaxation. Children and adults alike learned to weave history and rhythm into everyday life, preparing the community for more complex organization, memory, and culture. Safety and protection continued to expand in harmony with growth. Walls, gates, and watchpoints were extended thoughtfully. Patrols were gentle yet effective, ensuring security without disrupting the calm of daily life. Families moved carefully within neighborhoods, maintaining awareness and cooperation. Children participated in small, safe tasks, internalizing the principles of vigilance, responsibility, and shared care. The rhythm of daily activity, soft and deliberate, ensured that expansion and security coexisted peacefully, reinforcing the town's gentle, enduring order. Community gatherings reflected a balance of celebration, reflection, and instruction. Courtyards filled with soft conversations, songs, and laughter, punctuated by quiet observation of elders. Children hummed along with tunes, imitated rituals, and absorbed cultural practices without formal instruction. Evenings became a period of consolidation, where days' work, lessons, and reflection blended seamlessly into preparation for sleep. Fires glowed softly, shadows moved slowly, and the river mirrored the moonlight, embedding a sense of rhythm and calm across the settlement. The integration of all these practices, art, ritual, craft, trade, safety, observation, and storytelling, formed a subtle yet profound foundation. Families and individuals understood that greatness did not require haste, force, or spectacle. It required consistency, careful attention, and gentle accumulation of knowledge, skill, and social harmony. Children internalized these principles through observation and participation, gradually shaping a generation ready to inherit, preserve, and expand the settlement's culture. As the settlement matured, the quiet pulse of life became unmistakable. Every action sowing seeds, shaping clay, weaving mats, trading goods, singing songs, or telling stories was part of a gentle, persistent rhythm that connected people to one another, to the river, and to the land. Growth was steady, deliberate, and harmonious. Patience, observation, and mindful action were woven into the fabric of life, creating a living pattern that prepared the community for future achievements and enduring prosperity. And so, under the silver glow of the moon, the town rested in soft harmony, its walls, neighborhoods, and families poised for the slow, measured unfolding of greatness. Children dreamed of rivers, markets, workshops, and songs. Adults reflected on the day's careful actions. Elders, steady and patient, watched over the enduring rhythm of life in the quiet, unhurried progression of daily practice. The seeds of Babylon's enduring greatness were sown, destined to grow through centuries, rooted in harmony, patience, and deliberate care. The city's story was not forged in haste, but in the gentle, continuous heartbeat of a community learning to live in rhythm with itself and the world around it, a rhythm that would carry forward into history softly, quietly, and unbroken.